AI. What about that then? What a strange world we live in. And I think it's fair to say that while I am doing a lot around the world of AI, I am very positive and scared at the same time. I'm somebody who isn't full doom or full evangelist. I don't know what's going to happen. My approach to this kind of situation is to find out what I can do in order to work with what I do know rather than trying to predict, i.e., prophesy, what I think is going to happen because I don't know what's going to happen, but I can see what is happening. I mean, aside from AI, almost no matter who you are and what you do, we are, in a sense, all creators now. So if you're a musician, for example, whether you like it or not, you are having to be a film director, a copywriter, a business owner. I mean, just all of these different functions. But what's happening is that AI is coming along. And in a sense, one of the opportunities is that AI is coming along and actually making it possible in some areas for you to do more in less time. The thing is that at this stage, anyway, in a lot of those areas, AI isn't quite good enough yet. And I'm not saying that it won't be. So I'm not suggesting it's not going to become good enough to do a lot of the things that we might need to do. But at this particular stage, this might change like next month or something. This is how quickly it's going. But at this stage, it's not quite good enough. In fact, in some cases, it's completely not good enough at all to do some of the things that we might want to do. I mean, I'll talk to you about this in a second. But aside from all of that, I think a lot of people, maybe even the majority of people, are missing one of the biggest opportunities that I am experiencing on a daily basis with AI and with the use of AI. And it's an approach to using AI that it blows my mind that it seems that, well, not nobody, but almost nobody seems to be taking, including the people who are making it. And I think maybe the explanation I have for that is encapsulated in a little analogy. Are people who make pianos the greatest piano players? Maybe not. So it might be that the people who are creating AI aren't in fact the best at, or might not have the kind of experience or the skills or the particular way of looking at the world that might mean that they are able to use AI in a particular way. Because when I started using it, back when ChatGPT came along, I immediately started using it in a particular way and assumed that everyone else was doing it this way. And I'll tell you more about it in a second. But assumed that everyone else was using it this way. And then I realized that wasn't the case at all, that people were using it very differently from me in general. That's really the reason I've started doing this, because I believe that the approach that I'm taking is a complementary, alternative and complementary approach to the one that you'll see absolutely everywhere. And it changes a lot of the assumptions that we make when you take this approach. So I decided to put on this Q&A to find out from you what you were struggling with, what was going on for you, how you were thinking about AI, and maybe to offer some experience. So before anything else, let me just share with you where I'm doing a lot of the stuff that I'm doing with AI, because obviously I've got my music business, Make Music Your Life. And then I've also got this new business, Recursive Intelligence. And essentially, I have a Substack and also a separate YouTube channel where essentially I am putting everything that I'm doing, some written pieces. For instance, at the weekend, I released my first ever review. I've never reviewed anything in my life publicly anyway, because I don't tend to enjoy, I don't know, sharing maybe some criticisms about other people's work in public. It's just not my vibe. I'd rather just make my own thing. But in this case, because LLMs are grown and not made, which is weird in itself, I thought it was kind of different. So I had an experience with Claude for Opus, and I tested it in various different ways. So that's the latest thing on there. So subscribe to that if it interests you, because that's where I'm gathering all of the stuff about AI. Anyway, enough about me, and let's hear from you. So in the chat, I'd like to find out from you, number one, what are you creating? So what exactly are you creating? Because as I said, we're all creators. Are you building a business? Are you writing music? Are you doing something else? And also, how do you use AI to help you right now? Tony says code, no music, great. Oh, Paul says, I'm hoping it may help me do more. James, writing music and sound design for film. Zachary, AA for work, coding, but I create music. Jan, I'm writing, producing songs. Geert, music, business, web pages, using AI for coding, web design, and dinner planner. Brilliant. Yuri, a pro wrestling career and music production. I was just listening to a podcast from DeepMind about robotics, so maybe you'll be wrestling robots soon. Paul, writing my own stuff and collating. Still not sure whether to be the artist or just write. So far, AI for a bit of advice on how to get different sounds, use Kit, etc. Yeah, on that note about using AI as a manual, a large language model has been trained on the words on the internet to a certain point. That does not mean it has access to the word. Well, I'm not talking about web search. I'm now talking about the actual large language model, right? The thing, yeah, the model itself. So I'm not talking about web search. The large language model itself doesn't have access to its training. It has been trained on those words, and out of those words, it has created all of these, let's just call them numbers, formulas, yeah, billions different formulas, which are like relationships. Basically, the words broke up into tokens, and they're relationships between words. That's what those formulas represent. That is what it has access to. That is what it is. An LLM, in a sense, a large language model, is its training, but it doesn't have access to the training data. Okay, now obviously web search is an additional tool that some like ChatGPT and Claude recently has added, which means that it can access the internet, which is why it's such a big thing. But let's just talk about the large language model part of it. That means that if you're asking it questions about something specific, so let's say, I don't know, I've got a bit of gear and I don't know how to do this thing. And I say, well, how do I don't know, delete these parts or delete this number of parts at the same time? It was trained on the manual for that bit of gear, but it doesn't actually read the manual for that bit of gear unless you give it the manual or you give it the link to go and look at the manual now on the web. So because what it's doing, it is inferring what those instructions might be. Okay? Which is why it will say, oh yeah, you just do this and that and the other. And then it'll tell you something that just doesn't exist. Because if you think about it, if something has been trained upon all of the words on the internet, how much of a percentage of the words on the internet are that manual? It's going to be like 0.0000001% or something. And so it's kind of inferring what the instructions might be, given all of the instructions around that type of thing. So it's completely unsurprising that it hallucinates and makes things up in that situation. So if you want it to help you work gear or a bit of software, then actually give it the thing, the manual, and then do that. Or even better, actually go back and forth with it and tell it what you're doing. That's what I tend to do. So I have the thing that I'm trying to do over here, and I give it the instructions. So I'll often give it the support material. I'll give it the link. And then I will actually do the thing and go back and forth with it, expecting it to be wrong. So an LLM does not deliver truth. It happens to deliver truth because it's inferring what it thinks, whether it thinks or not is a different matter. But anyway, what it thinks you want to hear. So it's creating coherence, not truth. And some of what you want to hear may well be true. But that's only, it might be true. That doesn't mean it is true. It's really important that you understand that. Yeah. So you're not reading Google. LM, good name for this. Brilliant. Writing music and business strategy for my cat care business, using it to help think through personal issues and handle clients and takes on situations and create artwork for my music and marketing strategy as an artist. Yeah. So on that note of talking about other people and stuff, because it creates coherence and it tells you what you want to hear, you want to be careful of trying to make sure that it's giving you the opposing view. So I had a bit of a difficult situation yesterday, and the immediate thing I did, I just needed to process it a bit. So the immediate thing I did, I said, can you give me the situation from the other person's perspective? Because when an LLM spits out words, its words go into its context window, which will then influence what it comes out with in the future. And the words that you say go into its context window as well, and they influence its words in the future as well. So it's almost like you're directing it in a particular way. So if you want a more accurate and truthful view of a difficult situation with somebody, and you don't just want to be like agreed with, to say, yeah, no, you're right. You're totally right. You know it. Yeah. And no, they're totally wrong. And what you want to do is actually ask it for the opposing view, maybe even first, so that you're actually getting some kind of pushback. Because you may well have noticed that most LLMs think you're absolutely amazing and superhuman, the best person who's ever walked this face of the earth, right? Which obviously you are to a certain extent, but then so am I, and so is everybody else. Okay. I mean, I actually get very, very tired of ChatGPT saying, well, nobody ever does this. And I'm like, yeah, right, whatever. It's like, this is rare, and yeah, we are unique, and we are rare, and we are valuable, but come on, calm down. Right. So when you're talking about relationships with other people, one of the things I really fear is just being validated and confirmation biased into this kind of narrow view of you being right and everyone else being wrong. I mean, it's almost like, echo chambers on the internet where people believe increasingly stranger and stranger things. It's almost like this could become a solo echo chamber situation, and we want to avoid that. This is one of the reasons I'm so worried about it. Okay, brilliant. So let me ask you another question. What is your biggest frustration with building a creative business? And what is your biggest frustration with using AI right now? Adrienne, way too much information to wade through. Okay, it's interesting. What information exactly? Tim, biggest frustration, creating video content takes a lot of time. Yeah, not using AI. Dave, lack of reasoning with AI. Okay, so that's interesting. There's a podcast on my Substack about this, because I don't know exactly what people mean by reasoning. I would like you to define reasoning for me. Oh, sorry, don't worry, you don't have to do that in the chat. but what exactly do you mean by reasoning? Because it can mean all kinds of different things. What do you want to do that it can't do? Maybe that might be an easier question to answer. Zachary, not having enough creative ideas, AI being too generic, and always agreeing with what I say. Absolutely. Paul, clarity on direction and what it's realistic to achieve at my age with my talent, and then how to keep up with tech and how to prioritize what to use without going into endless rabbit holes. Yes. Aaron, the moving parts and time required can become a time waster very quickly. Yeah. Yuri, hallucinating instead of arguing and providing data. Constant hallucinations. Jake, balancing creating content with making music. Figuring out how to best leverage it. Scripts, video ideas. And I'm not trying to build a business. I'm just in it for the creativity. Yeah, I mean, if you want to release any of that creativity, Jan, you are building a business. It's basically the same thing, like product, audience. Yeah. So a business, maybe you're defining business in a different way to me, which is fair enough. James, how to sell music? I generate tons of questions and it becoming piles of information. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I'll talk about that in a sec. All right, so Jamie, building a plan and having some accountability. Yeah, to knowing how to wield AI in an inspiring way. Brilliant. Dave, finance. Okay. Colin, considering there's so many options, extremely hard to choose what would serve me. Not sure about my qualities and how to use them purposefully. Okay. Paul, analysis of business cases, you actually still have to read them first and understand them before running them through the machine. Adrian, AI is attempting just to ask questions to data dump and you end up with tons of choices. Better to curate on the front end, I think. Maybe. The trouble is with curating on the front end, it doesn't matter what you do, the AI just ends up coming up with loads of choices. It just, even when you prompt it to not, it ends up doing it. So, and also the way that it works, it's this kind of multiple branching thing. So curating on the front end, yes, but you have to continue curating all the way through. That's just the way that it works at this point anyway. Cynthia, doing marketing, social media, getting out there, using AI, feeling authentic when using AI. Some of it is good, some of it feels quite bland and generic. Yeah. Yuri, I'm building a creative business, monetizing content. I want to strictly produce music, not build an education funnel. Cool. Alyosha, making a workflow that naturally works for my personality, not really using it. Okay. All right, brilliant. So let me just talk a bit and then we'll open the questions. One of the things you will notice is most people automate using AI. So how can I get an AI to do the things that I already do? And that is absolutely valuable, but it, of course, isn't the only thing that you can get it to do. The thing is that automation in and of itself is not necessarily what you want to do. So, for example, if you're a musician and you enjoy making music, do you actually want an AI to do the things that you enjoy? Probably not. You want to keep doing those things. But also, at this stage, all of the AIs I use just simply aren't good enough to do some of the things. I mean, I have heard of people who are automating some things that you might not think they can do. But then when I look at the output that they are creating with it, to me, it's not good enough. Don't be surprised if at this stage you do get a bland and generic output, because without an enormous amount of effort, it's actually very hard to get an AI to do something that really does sound like you. Now, again, everything I'm saying about automation right now, I'm not saying this is the way that it will always be. I'm talking today. Things may change in the future. I'm just talking about right now. But aside from all that, even though automation has problems, and also even though it can be very helpful, for me anyway, it's not my default way of using AI at all. The way that I use AI, more than anything else, is to augment myself, to make what I am doing better, to actually create higher quality. For example, I spent 2 hours yesterday with Claude, Opus 4, going back and forth about a headline to a sales page that I'm writing. And it was one of the most incredible, stimulating conversations about marketing copy. Yes, it is possible to have one of those. Okay. But it was one of the most, it was really an amazing conversation. And I think we came up with some variations that were absolutely great, like amongst the best I've ever written. And when I say we, I do mean we. So I was having a conversation with it as if it was a human, a person. So I can create higher quality through the interaction with an AI by asking it a question, it returning something, me reading through the output and saying, okay, that's not right. How about this? Or how about updating that? Yeah. So I'm curating the output and then responding with that feedback, and then it responds back. And so, I mean, it's just like a conversation with a human being. In the same way, I can think more critically, I can improve my ideas, I can have new insights in this back and forth with AI, because you've got access to a thing that has been trained on everything on the internet. And obviously, you don't know everything. I don't know everything on the internet. So it's an incredibly valuable tool for you actually upgrading your knowledge. The other thing that you can do with AI, which is absolutely huge, is get it to recognize patterns in your behavior. Each of us are uniquely good at very, very specific things in a very specific constellation. So if you think of your brain as being neuroplastic, so it changes according to how you think, and every single experience that you've had will change your brain in some way. With that in mind, how many people on the earth have had exactly the same, who have ever lived, have had exactly the same experiences as you in exactly the same order? Precisely zero. Therefore, your brain is unique. Therefore, you are unique in some way. There's never been anyone exactly the same as you. And what an ongoing conversation with an AI can do is it can actually get you to understand more about yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your likes, your dislikes, the struggles that you've had, the wonderful times that you've had. You can really start to build up a kind of picture of who you are uniquely and what you are uniquely able to do uniquely well. Because an AI, an LLM, is essentially a pattern recognizer. I mean, that's how it works. All of these numbers are essentially it recognizing patterns, relationships between concepts and words. So if you think of an AI as being the ultimate pattern recognition tool and you're speaking to it over time, then you can get it over time by keeping a file updated of what I call your unique genius. Now, I'm not saying you are a genius because I don't think there is such a thing. We all have a unique genius, which is what I've already said, the unique constellation of your strengths and weaknesses. So in my conception of what a genius is, it includes your strengths, it includes your weaknesses, it includes the things that you struggle with, it includes the things that you absolutely love to do. So by actually asking the AI what it notices from a conversation, I did it yesterday with this conversation with Claude about this headline on a sales page. I actually said, what do you notice about me? Strengths, weaknesses, what I tend to default to, blind spots. So I am definitely talking about the negative side as well, but also what do I seem to be good at? You know, it gives me a bullet point, this, that, and the other. And then I curate that and I say, well, I'm not sure about this. Why did you say that? That's interesting. I've never thought of that before. And then I put that into a project file, a text file, and then I upload that file into future LLMs and I keep that updated. It's what I call my genius file. And that is something that I'm doing because now the LLM understands, weird word to say about these machines, but anyway, let's just say understands something about me in every conversation. It's over time improving my interactions with AI, and this becomes a kind of multiplication effect so that I can start doing stuff that is aligned with who I am and what I want and where I want to go. And I can stop doing and do less of the stuff that isn't aligned with who I am and what I want. Now, on the Substack, there's actually a full article about this Genius file, so you can go and take a look there if you want to start doing that yourself. But I've found it incredibly valuable to do that. So that's the augment part. Now, in terms of automating, what I tend to do with automation isn't my actual output. So I've tried to get it to write emails, list emails. It just doesn't do it very well. It just doesn't sound like me. And when it does, I end up editing it into oblivion. So I might as well just write it myself at this point. And I have tried multiple different prompting strategies. But at this point, I don't use it for anything that is public facing. The second thing is that I automate things that requires little thought. It doesn't matter if it gets it wrong. I also automate stuff that doesn't have to be unique. It doesn't have to express who I am. The main thing I do use automation for is what isn't aligned with who I am. This is all playing into the Genius file thing, but which I must do anyway. So with Claude 4, one of the things that I did was I asked it to help me sort out my disastrous dumpster fire of an email inbox. And it gave me all of these advanced filters that basically now I checked it yesterday and there was like 2 emails in there, whereas usually there would have been like 65, which will save me loads of time, obviously, because checking email isn't something that's aligned with me. And then the final way that at this point is absolutely essential is audit. Now, I know audit isn't a very nice word, but it's absolutely essential that when you are using AI, because of what I said about how it does not deliver truth. It only happens to be true. It can't be accurate on purpose. It only happens to be accurate. So you've got true and accurate is one circle, and you've got coherent as the other circle. Those 2 circles intersect. So you can have something that is true and not coherent, because there's a lot of stuff in the world that is true and not coherent. And you can have stuff that is coherent but not true. For example, when it tells you what you want to hear about how you're, the greatest human being to have ever walked the earth, if you want to hear that, of course. Yeah, so that is coherent, but it's unlikely to be true because I don't think there is such a thing. Okay. But it is coherent if that's what you want to hear. What we want to get is the stuff that is coherent and true. Okay. So how do we do that? Well, by actually auditing every single output. And I know this can be a lot of work, but do you know what? Everybody is freaking out about how AI is going to create cognitive decline in human beings. Just like online, the internet has created a problem of people not being able to focus and do deep work. Well, similarly, people are worried, and I'm sure it's true because of the way the brain works. I'm worried about it creating the situation of cognitive decline where people are automating everything, so they just don't do anything. So we end up in a Wall-E situation of everybody like floating around on sofas, just getting the kind of AI generated slop going into their heads. If you audit every single AI output, so you make it an absolute rule, I am going to read what it spits out at me, and I am going to question it when I'm not sure about it. I'm questioning it when I don't understand. What is that doing? It's doing the opposite, isn't it? It's creating a situation where you're not in cognitive decline. You're actually growing your mind because you're becoming this expert sort of editor, somebody who is able to actually critically think about what an entity, somebody else, something else is telling you. The other thing I audit is how I'm actually prompting AI. So if I'm automating something, I will usually use an AI as a partner to help me actually prompt better. And also I'm asking it how to improve how I'm working with it. Use the AI to improve how you're using AI. The other thing I'm doing is I'm auditing what I'm creating, coaching and training. So for example, I will put the transcript of this anonymized into an AI and I will ask it for feedback. What did you notice? What did I do well? What did I do badly? Where could I improve? What were the problems? I'm also asking it to check things that I write and the stuff that I make. And of course, I'm also getting it to audit my progress and my plans. So my approach, augment, automate, and audit. It's a much more complete approach than simply thinking about how am I going to do the same crap faster. What's interesting in augment is that it's almost like the opposite of automate, because I spent a very, very long time yesterday working on just a very short piece of copy, which is the headline of a sales page. The reason I did that, though, is because a headline really can make all of the difference. And it was worth it because what I came out with was much, much better than what I would have come out with on my own. How do I get an AI to stop outputting slop, vanilla and generic? Work with an AI to improve your output. It might take slightly longer, but you'll get something much better out of it. And well, how do I find the time to do that? By automating the things that don't require such a high quality, the grindy things that you just find yourself doing, oh, I've got to do this thing again. So I do an AI Genius Lab, which is a series of live workshops combining this, my coaching method and the AAA approach, where I take you through step by step some AI flows live. Some people here have done the first one, so they're actually live, but they're also recorded. Each one is different and self-contained. So the first one, called Signal Ignition, that's actually now available, the recorded version. There's one coming, which is a different one, which is going to be focused on what I was talking about with the unique genius, which is focused on really identifying and understanding something about your genius. Okay, so over to you. Put your Zoom hand up if you want to ask a question and have a conversation with me. If you'd rather just ask a question in the chat, that's okay too. I much prefer to have conversations because then I can actually go back and forth and ask you questions about what you're actually trying to do and how I can help you. But if you'd rather just ask a question in the chat, then please go ahead. Hello, Paul.
Hello.
Oh, hang on.
All I can say is that I've been exploiting AI in a similar fashion progressively over the last 6 months and using it as a critical partner in my work. Where people say, oh, you're using AI, you're cheating. No, I'm using it to enhance my output. And I'm just like taking documents, uploading those and saying, okay, how can I use this in a specific way? And then it gives me a quality output, and then I critique that, and then I challenge it, and then challenge assumptions and just get a better quality output for me. And it's just helping me to feel less overwhelmed with my work on a day-to-day basis. And I'm just absolutely loving the potential that's out there, and it's helping my wife build her business and work through various things, and it's just fantastic. So I think I'm thanking you for just sharing the potential with the world, and I'm just very excited about it. So I'll stay tuned because I think we're on like a really progressive curve right now. So thank you.
Yeah, well, no, that's great to hear. I mean, what do you use? Let's find out what you use first of all, because Cynthia's got a question. Do you use ChatGPT or Claude? And my answer to that question is yes.
I use ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And if I've got to do something, sometimes I use hypothetical scenarios if it's working on something work-based, so I'm not releasing any information. But also, I use Google as well.
Gemini, yeah. I mean, so I use all of them. There's actually an app that I use called Typing Mind, where what you can do is you can actually have access to all of the models via the API. So the API is basically the back end where you plug into it. So it's typingmind.com. And it's kind of, I don't like it very much for the way it looks. It's a little bit like, but essentially what you can do is you can plug into all of the different models. In fact, you can plug into all of the different models, and also you can actually buy it outright. So you can buy the thing outright so that you don't have to subscribe to ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini. Instead, what you can do is you can plug into the API and you pay for usage. And the other thing that you can do in Typing Mind, which is really, really cool, is you can actually, let's say, because like in Typing Mind, I've got Claude, all of the different Claude models, all of the different ChatGPT models. I've got all of the different Gemini models, DeepSeek models, weird models that you've never heard of before. And what you can do is you can actually ask a question, and you can ask it of multiple different AIs at the same time. And then they all give you different answers. It's very, very overwhelming, but they all give you different answers, and you can actually see which one's best for a particular use case. The slight downside with Typing Mind is that it's a bit like just the look of it and the way that it is. It's a bit, that kind of, it's got like a slightly scammy vibe about it, but it's fine. I've never had any problems on that side of it, but it just looks a bit like, ugh. And it's got all kinds of other functionality as well. It can be quite overwhelming, but if you want to pay ongoing for access, it's a lot cheaper in a sense. But the trouble is with Typing Mind as well is that because you're paying for the API, if you get into really long conversations, it actually can cost quite a bit, because with an LLM, every time you answer it, it actually it looks at the whole conversation, which really it can really include token usage. So I went for a walk yesterday when I was talking to Claude, and I think it ended up costing me, that walk ended up costing me about 350, which is a lot of API usage. It's very, very high because it was a really long conversation. So that's a downside with it. Okay. But if you want access to more models and you want to pay as you go, and you're the kind of person who maybe just wants shorter conversations, then TypingMind might be something you want to use. Do you have like kind of workflows and ways that you actually use AI to do this kind of thing? Or is it more just off the cuff?
I pretty much just tell it, this is what I need to do today. This is when I need to do it by. And it helps me chunk things down into manageable chunks. So at the minute, I'm training for a bike race. I've got an exam, and I've got a job to apply for in the next week. Normally, that would just send me into a spiral, but at the minute, I just feel very on top of things. And on top of that, I'm saying, what am I eating? What should I do? When should I stop training? And it's just saying, actually, don't do that extra lap of the mountain bike trail. Stop now, and you'll recover better, and you'll have a better race. And that is really good, because I was going to do another lap yesterday, and it was like, okay, yeah, I'll recover.
Yeah, I mean, make sure whenever it gives you, and particularly for medical advice, and I'm sure you know this already, Paul, I'm just more saying this for the purpose of for everyone else, particularly for medical advice or anything like that, make sure that you double check what it's telling you, because as I said, it infers, it doesn't actually, it can't give you the truth. Yeah. And the other thing is, if it's giving me a piece of advice, I will often, so it's giving me a piece of advice where it's saying do something different to what I would have done anyway. I will always say, why did you say that? When it is saying do this and don't do that, ask it why, particularly if it's doing something that you wouldn't have done anyway. Okay. Peter.
As you know, I've been building this music-driven XR experience, which is really turned into a music-based TV series and live performance venue that's built in Unreal Engine and is launching in about a month's time. So I'm using green screen metahumans, which are motion capture driven characters that I've designed and built, spent a lot of time doing all that, building all the characters, and have the whole thing ready. And I've always sort of been wanting to do this to be, as I say, certified 100% AI free, because I really want people to realize this is not an AI generated idea, characters, video, and everything else. And you know, I'm getting ready to launch this, and I'm looking at all the video generated AI, which I don't particularly like, but I do feel I need to incorporate that because I'm trying to do a complete mixed reality show. So I'm just a bit despondent about the reception that it might have, that people like look at it and just go, that looks AI, that is AI generated, the whole thing, because of the idea, where it's based, and the interaction I'm using of in real life characters shot on a green screen, talking to metahumans, which are CG generated characters. But even they're CG generated, I'm controlling all their actions and facial and voice, everything is organic. So it's just, you know, it's just like, okay, how can I embrace it in a way that doesn't feel like it is a complete AI show? Does that make sense?
So what? So first of all, and I'm going to ask you questions. I mean, you're familiar with this. I'm more saying this for the benefit of everyone else. I'm going to ask you questions that most people would interpret it as me taking a position. And that's not what I'm doing. I'm asking questions in order to find out your position. So, yeah. So what is the reason that you are despondent that people would think that it was AI? Or what are the reasons?
Okay, it feels like a cheat. It feels like the 2.5 years of excessive amount of work that I put into this would just be like, oh, you just I feel they won't see the effort that's gone into it and look at it in a way that I look at AI content. I'm like, okay, it's AI. I just flick past it. It doesn't resonate in a way that I would like it to. And honestly, obviously, I'm very picky about pixels and visuals. It's what I do for a living. So I'm probably way too picky compared to the average person that's probably going to look at it. But it's just it just bothers me.
Yeah. So I think there's two things here, because you said, number one, I feel despondent that somebody would think that I hadn't done all of the hard work that I have done. Yes, that's one.
You gotta know.
Yeah. So they need to know. They need to see like my fingernails that are like bloody and like, how bald I am. And yeah. So they have to know this. So that's one thing. And then the other side of it is a quality thing. Okay. Now I think we want to separate those two things, because I think one is, well, you tell me, is one more important than the other? And if so, which one is more important than the other?
Honestly, neither is important.
Right.
In the realm of things, neither one is. I'm just trying to head off the possibly oncoming critique, which is good or bad, I don't care. I'm not fussed about that. But I'm just trying to figure out how to make it obvious it's not AI.
I mean, just by saying it's not AI, and then they'll have to believe you. But the thing is that on the sort of effort side, if you think about this, is going to change very, very quickly, because at the moment we're in a transition period where a lot of the how. So when I say how, it's people writing, people actually making the video. And by the way, me saying this is not going, yay, I'm just saying it. Yeah.
No.
So people writing, even making music can be or will be able to be done with AI. That doesn't mean that all of it will be made with the AI, because, people still read physical books. People still, it's not going to completely go away, but a lot more people are going to be able to do the howing with AI. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the people who want to keep on howing, making music, making films, actually writing, rather than getting an AI to write for them, what becomes important to them in that situation? Peter, what becomes important about their work if anyone can write with AI who doesn't really want to write, or doesn't really want to make a video another way, or a film?
Quality of story, character. I think we're still ahead as humans being able to do that, ahead of the curve for a while, but that may change. But to me, that's the defining, it's whether somebody's going to watch it or not.
But also, how will they, why would they watch something made by a human and not something made by an AI, assuming that an AI is going to get to the level of quality that a human can?
Well, I think there's going to be a backlash. Once everything's gone one way, it's going to come back and go, I want to see a real band. I want to hear real music. I want to see a real person on the screen. There's a connection.
By the way, AI output is real. There's no doubt it's real. So we want to make sure we make that distinction. It's definitely real. That's why we're talking about it. Okay, it's not that it's not real. But there's something you haven't said, which I think is really, really important in this particular case, and that's about what is unique. Right?
Yes.
That's because at the end of the day, I think even if an AI could make something in theory, it won't, because so if I make something unique, a piece of music, let's say, a unique piece of music, you could have made that piece of music. Peter could have made that, but you didn't. Why? Well, because you're not me. I did because I made it unique. The same is going to be true of AI. Yeah, there's actually like an AI won't make everything that it's possible to make in one instant. So if they're like people who are making things with AI start making this kind of thing, well, that's something that as a unique artist that you respond to, and you make something. Maybe you will influenced by it, or maybe in reaction against it. But none of this actually changes that part of it. It's the only thing that does change is that there's an absolute mass more of that stuff, which in a sense actually makes you doing something unique more valuable. So I mean, how many years have I been jumping up and down about making unique stuff? I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's just like forever. Yeah. And it's just becoming more and more and more important. So it's just more of that. And I think yes, obviously the quality has to be high, but there may well be a point at which the quality in terms of like, I don't know, like the high fidelity type quality, that type of quality, actually becomes less important for unique creators because you want to make it less polished. Because possibly
I think that's happened because people are making fantastic content on the most useless piece of hardware. So that's the defining thing. The hardware does not matter. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, my son recently got an SP404, and I say, okay, what's great? What's great at Roland SP404? And he's like, what's great about it? And he goes, it's got this cassette tape noise on it. And I was like, I spent most of my life, I spent most of my life trying to get rid of that noise. And now he's excited about a thing that makes it. So, but yeah, I think there is a real like thirst for the analog. When I say analog, you know what I mean. I'm not going all analog.
Organic.
Yeah, but it's like it's for there is a real thirst for it, and that will always be the case for humans. I think I can predict that at least. Whether it gets found or not is a different matter. That's a whole other question. I think just to finish up on the effort point, I think that may well be. I understand it. I completely understand how you.
It is what it is.
But it's just release that.
And I absolutely, because it's so outweighed by the importance of what I've done and getting it out and getting it done. That well, doing everything that you've done on your own, it takes that amount of time because it's just insane. So it's like just get over it and move on.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Great to talk. Excellent. So I haven't got someone here with me, so I'm doing lots of this myself. Okay, Cynthia.
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Peter, I appreciate that conversation that you had with Peter, because that was something that's in the back of my mind as well, with like, is this fake content? Is this not as good or not as real or not as something because it's generated with AI? So I found that to be valuable.
Yeah, I mean,
also.
I think there is a I've often spoken about how people equate hard equals good. So there's effort makes it more valuable. Now, I do understand that. I'm not saying there's no truth to that whatsoever, but it's not actually hard is hard. Good is good. You can work really hard on something and it'd be really bad. Equally, you can something can come out very easily and it'd be very good. So I think there's a cultural thing that's come about through, just the sort of hard work thing. And that is currently being questioned. And I think there's a lot of sort of reaction against AI where people are saying that this is inherently worth less because somebody made it with AI in and of itself, and that's it, full stop. And I'm like, well, that can't be true, because there is going to be something made by AI that is better than what I could make in 2 years. Yeah, it just is better.
Mhm.
Yeah, that is, like, if I try to make a film over 2 years, I can guarantee you that AI will probably do a better job in many, many different ways in 2 minutes or however long it takes to process it. Yeah. So I don't think in and of itself I understand why people feel like that, but it's almost like I think we will get past that. And whether you like it or not, that's kind of what human beings will do, whether it's in my generation or your generation or, a younger generation. At some point, this kind of putting hard work on an altar of sort of that means it's good, I think will kind of start to dissipate. And I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I just think it will happen. Anyway, what was your
Yeah, I feel that I've also like already have been like bridging over that, like getting over that hump since I
yes.
started playing with AI.
Mm.
So yeah, my question is how to you mentioned that you don't do anything outward facing on AI yet. So you do a lot of like the thinking aspects and the behind the scenes things. And I've kind of found that also because like my marketing material, I will like I'll ask for ideas from AI and I'm like some of them I'll then develop and put them in my voice, and then sometimes I'll be out walking or something and I'll dictate a really quick like idea that I love, and AI will like flatten it to this boring generic thing, and I'm like, no thank you, I'm just going to stick with what I originally had, plus like your call to action was much clearer than mine, so yes, I'll edit here. So I've been using it to kind of like help me edit little things, but I'm curious how you are going to approach, if you do even like any front facing things
Well, I
with
mean,
AI.
yeah, so I do. So for example, the headline that I spent 2 hours with Claude on yesterday,
Mhm.
that is a front facing thing, but
Right.
Claude didn't write it, but I wrote it much better than I could have done alone.
Yeah.
So if you think about how an AI conversation works, is that every single output, either from you, well, input from you or output from the AI. And the reason I use words like output and input is I just want to always remember that this isn't it, right? This thing isn't it. Yeah. So the output from the AI and your input is influencing the probability of the next words that it will output. Okay. So,
Mhm.
so it's like a kind of you'll notice as you have a conversation with AI, particularly if you don't kind of do a massive prompt at the start and you just start with a question, it gets better. Yeah. And then eventually it gets worse again because it's too much, right? So it's
Yes,
too
I've
much for it to
noticed that.
process. Yeah, it'll degrade. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it kind of gets better and there's a sort of kind of sweet spot in the middle. And what so when I'm working with an AI in this way, it's not okay. Here's a headline. I want you to rewrite it 10 times. What I do usually is I say, so I give it context. Okay, because really the conversation is about getting to the point where it has context. So
Mhm.
if I let me see if I can actually find it so I can read some of the things that I said. All right. So I started with a headline that I'd already written. That was my favorite headline, not my favorite. I think it was the best headline I've ever written. Okay. So I posted that at the top of the chat and I said, this was in Claude Opus 4 with thinking on, which is like the hardcore one, and I said, why do you think this is the best sales page headline I've ever written? Okay, so why do you think, Cynthia, that I asked that question to start this conversation with Claude?
So that it can start delving into, so it could start making context for itself.
Right. So it's a way. So instead of saying, "I want you to rewrite this headline," and then write this massive prompt, which is essentially
and you feed it all the context. You're like seeing if the context is present in your headline. Oh, that's amazing. Okay, that's cool.
So it's like you're actually asking it to create its own context. So I'm not saying you are an expert copywriter. I mean, you can do that too. I'm not saying that's how. I'm not going, you are an expert copywriter and blah blah blah, and don't do this and do that and do that, because what ends up happening in that situation, I found, is that you end up with it doing the generic thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So instead of saying you are an expert copywriter, well, because expert copywriters do the generic thing usually, right? Yeah. So instead of saying that, I actually give it what I have done, and then I ask it, why do you think that this is the best sales page headline I've ever written? So you're actually asking it to actually pull out and analyze it itself, then it goes, this headline works exceptionally well because it taps into a deep emotional conflict that many creators and entrepreneurs experience. Here's why it's so powerful: the emotional arc, the death metaphor, perfect audience target, the contrast, and it gives a thing, right? And it asked me a brilliant question at the end, which was, what stage of awareness would you say your ideal reader is at when they encounter this headline? So then I said, they're problem experiencing, but they don't realize it's a problem in the problem aware way. So they think blah, blah, blah. So I said those stuff. But then at the end, I didn't just leave it at that. I said, do you agree? Where might you push back? Right. So I'm actually, because the problem is with giving it an opinion is you're in danger of it going down what I call a kind of coherence hole, where you just start kind of confirming everything. And you don't want to be in that situation with an AI, because you can just end up, drinking your own Kool-Aid. Yeah. So whenever I give it an answer or an opinion, which I do actually hold, I ask it to give me the opposing view. Because remember, I'm always concerned about the context. Yeah. It's like, it's almost like you're kind of, you're a conductor, or you're an improviser, where you're sort of steering it in a particular direction and not allowing it to go too far down this rabbit hole or down this rabbit hole by the questions you ask it. Yeah. Okay. So then it came back with something, and then I said, there's another model I love. And then I gave it another model from somebody else, and I told it about the model. And then I
when
said,
you say model, are you saying headline model or sales page
it's not
model? Or?
It's more of a marketing model. There's a thing called
okay.
So it's just it's just it's a Blair Warren thing, and
sure.
I said I've used it all the time just to think through marketing copy. And I said, so I gave it the model, and I said, this headline hits all of them, doesn't it? And then so instead of saying, use this model, I asked it to analyze the headline. And by the way, if you're not into marketing copy, other people, if you're not into marketing copy, you can use this kind of approach for doing almost anything. Yeah. So don't zero in on the marketing angle of it. Right. So it's just, you can do it with almost anything. So I started by giving it a thing that I thought was amongst my best, and asked it why it was my best. Yeah. Then I asked it, then it asked me a question, and I gave an opinion, and then asked it why I might be wrong about that. I asked it for pushback. Then, because of what it came up with, I was like, okay, we're getting quite close to it kind of understanding. It's really getting me and what I'm trying to do here. Yeah, it's almost like I'm curating the output and going, okay, it's close, but it's not, it's probably missing something that I use all the time. So then I gave it the thing that I use all the time, which is the framework. Yeah. And then I said, this headline hits all of them. So again, I'm asking it to analyze the headline through the lens of the framework that I use all the time. So again, it responded and went, holy shit, you're right. This is like discovering your headline has a hidden architectural blueprint. Let me map it, right? And it got all excited. And so then it went through it, And then it asked me, did you consciously design it? So I just said something about it. So at that point, essentially, I was like, all right, now I'm ready to start actually working with this AI in this chat.
Yeah. Okay.
So in other words, it's a kind of, it's a different way of prompting an AI where it's like you're treating it as a human being, but a human being that can be any human being.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds great. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. So it's what I call vibe prompting rather than prompt engineering. So it's like prompt engineering is all about making the perfect input to create the perfect output, whereas vibe prompting is much more in, out, curate, in, out, curate. It's a much more of a kind of collaborative coaching almost. You're almost like coaching the AI to become the AI that you need.
Yeah. I'm curious, the question that Claude asked you, which is where do you think your customer is in their journey? Is that a Claude thing or is that just an AI thing? Because I noticed that most of the questions that ChatGPT is asking me is after it gives me a response, it's, would you like me to put this in a PDF for you? Or like, something that's like useless, you know?
Exactly.
Do you want a mantra? And I'm like, no, just,
Okay.
I want to keep in this conversation.
Yeah. So Claude 4 Opus, which came out on Friday last week, is I want to be very careful with what I'm saying because weird things can happen with models. So they start doing strange things, and then I feel terrible because I've said it's great and it's not. Then it ends up not being great. So I just want to put that health warning on there. So I started using it on Sunday. So it was the day before yesterday for me. And I started using it on Sunday, and I've been very, very impressed with it because it seems to be like at a different level. It's kind of subtle at first, but because at the start of this conversation, I was doing ChatGPT at the same time as Claude. So I was doing the same thing. And it was almost like ChatGPT was just, the 4.0 ChatGPT was so much worse. Whereas this was actually felt more like having a conversation with somebody who was very, very good at marketing and understood what I was trying to get at. Whereas ChatGPT comparatively was almost like, it's literally it's much flatter or something. It's really hard to describe.
Yeah.
It's like talking to Claude, and bear in mind it's Claude 4 Opus. Talking to Claude 4 Opus, which is the sort of highest model, it's much deeper. Having said that, I wouldn't necessarily use Claude 4 Opus for everything because sometimes I don't need that level of kind of depth, if you like. But I definitely think that this new model, Claude 4 Opus, is a step change above what you're getting from ChatGPT. Having said that, ChatGPT is very valuable. And one of the downsides with Claude is that it runs out of usage quite quickly, even on the...
That was my next question.
Yeah.
Even on a paid program?
I'm on the first, not max, which is like $250. I'm on the $20 plan.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Oh, I didn't realize. Okay.
Yeah.
It runs out that quickly.
Well, I mean, it does.
Thanks
Put it this way. I was working with it for 2 hours and it didn't run out, but that's because I didn't put any project files into it or anything because I wanted to make sure to get to the end of this conversation. So one of the things to bear in mind is that when you're adding project files, it's constantly loading those tokens into the thing. So you run out of usage much quicker. Because this way of doing it, these conversations are longer than prompt engineering. So that is a downside of vibe prompting, but the upside is so huge that, again, I'm not saying don't do prompt engineering because there are certain things that it's better for, but it's just an alternative. This is the augment way.
Yeah, and I don't like prompt engineering. I've been using ChatGPT the way that you describe, like having a conversation like it's a human, and I've been able to. So now I'm kind of seeing like I have been feeding that context in just through the conversation because the results I've been getting have been amazing. And I hear a lot of people, I get some generic stuff, but the other thing about it is it's really honed my ability to smell bullshit and to find my own voice. kind of like with, you know, the music machine. It's like we do enough stuff over time. It's like, oh, this is my voice. This is what I like and don't like. So it's really helped me to hone my voice.
Yeah.
But yeah, like all this prompt engineering stuff, I'm like,
Yeah, I mean,
I don't work that way either.
yeah, I mean, it is a very, I mean, obviously it's called prompt engineering, and it's what engineers, and I've got nothing against engineers. My dad is an engineer, so I've got nothing against them, but it's it's a certain way of approaching it, and I think it's a very deterministic way of approaching it, and these are actually probabilistic machines. So while I think it can help, I'm not sure it's necessarily even the best way of using these.
It's like the engineers using the program instead of the piano maker letting the pianist play. You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Cool.
Thank you
so
Susan.
much.
Yeah, no worries at all. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to mute you. That was rude. Sorry. I was meant to remove your spotlight. All right, Benjamin.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Hi. I have basically two clusters of questions. The one is, I also saw it mentioned in the chat about privacy.
Yeah.
Like, if I have a really brilliant business idea that I want to use for myself, do I threaten the uniqueness of that by giving it to the AI and therefore making it even indirectly available to other people, stuff like that? And in a deeper sense, basically the same question, but on a larger scale, isn't there a kind of ethical question of like, how fast do we make these things evolve to take up our own space?
Yeah.
Or role?
So on the privacy question, so what is exactly the privacy worry that you have?
Like in this more practical level of that, I would guess the AI trains on all conversations. It would make sense. So if I have brilliant ideas about whatever, and I work on these ideas, I've fed the AI with that idea, and it's therefore then available to the collective.
Okay, so that could well be true, yeah. And so if you so it depends whether you trust the companies who are delivering the service. Okay. So let's just I mean I don't know what to say. I mean, again, I'm not saying that you do or you don't trust them, but let's just say that we do trust what they say, because I don't think there's any, what else can we do? Yeah. So if you're using the API, for example, it says it won't train. They say that it won't train on what you're putting in. Okay. Also, within ChatGPT, for example, you can actually switch a switch which says don't train on any of this stuff. Similarly, you can. There's also a temporary chat thing, which I think is probably even stronger. And also, if you're worried about other things like that, maybe turning off the personalization. Now, so if we believe what the services, the companies who are providing the services are telling us, then it shouldn't train on your data. If you don't believe them, well, then you've got a problem. Yeah. And I'm not saying you've got a problem. I mean, you literally do have a privacy problem that you need to maybe not use them or something, which is fine. You can use you can find out how to actually use models on your own machine if you've got a powerful enough machine, which you may well do. That's actually easier than you might think. So you can do that's another option. In which case, then you wouldn't have that problem at all, because it's not going to the services. So in terms of actually whether the idea will then come up for someone else, well, number one, Again, I'm not saying it's not possible. Of course, it's possible. But number one, if you think about how many words that the AI has been trained upon, it's like trillions and trillions of words. So your idea is going to be like such a micro part of its training. It's not going to have a high statistical weight, if you like.
And in a way, it's not coming up for the machine as an idea,
No,
but as a word combination.
yeah, exactly. It's a word combination. So theoretically it could, I guess, but it would be unlikely to, because I don't know if you were somebody incredibly famous, I don't know, maybe then there would be more danger of it, but even then I'm not sure. And also, if you try and get an AI at this point anyway to explain to you how to use a piece of equipment, and it hallucinates and gets things wrong, then that's probably what would happen with your idea, even if that did happen. Do you know? Do you know what I mean? It's like, so I can only tell you, like, it's for you to make your decisions about privacy. I'm not dismissing them out of hand. I can only tell you what my thoughts are. And I'm not saying this is right. I might be wrong about this, but the way I'm seeing it is I actually want to tell the AIs what I'm doing. Right? I actually want them to train upon what I am thinking, because I would like, because I mean, I might be wrong about this, but I feel that I have something of value to contribute to humanity. And again, your second question brings up a question, but let's just stay where we are, right? So I want to contribute to humanity, and I believe, and this might be kind of, I might be overstating myself, but I believe that it's actually valuable what I have to say, and I would like what I have to say to be included in the training data. In fact, be influential in the training data. So that's my thoughts about privacy. I'm less concerned. If anything, I want my stuff to be used to train the AIs. In fact, I've been trying to figure out how to make that more likely, in fact. So
Yes.
Now, that might be strange. That might be, and I'm not saying it's right, and I might be making a huge mistake. I don't know, but that's just that's the way I'm seeing it personally.
That was also like for the larger framework thing, the other approach of thinking that came up for me. Like, if you're thinking life affirming thoughts that are valuing like the unique human quality of our species, that it may be like a very good idea to feed that into, because probably a lot of stuff that is fed into those machines is coming from
very different place.
Assumptions.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah. So I'm actually currently creating a thing called an epistemic corpus, which I've asked, like, with the help of AI, I'm figuring out how to arrange it in a way that makes it very easy for AIs to train on.
Yes.
Which makes it more likely that they will. But I mean, it's a moonshot. It's highly unlikely to happen because I'm not very important, not very famous. But it's something that I am thinking about. So it's almost like the opposing problem.
Yes. So, and it may be actually, there are probably a lot of people who have similar ideas.
Yeah, I would think so.
So there could be a swarm thing going on with that.
Exactly.
The other cluster of questions I have, unless you have something like really big towards this to say anymore, and this is just much more practical. Like, I just would like to go with you shortly through the ideas that are developing in the moment. Like, is my approach like off or on the right course, something like that?
Yeah. Okay.
Like, the first thing I built was building a bot for, like, building an AI for working with AI, like just a custom GPT in ChatGPT, just as an assistant for how do I approach it, and asking it questions that I have been doing a few days now, like, how does a model digest data? How does it digest specific data that I give it? How do I create a living document? What skills do I need? I came upon regularly upon Markdown
Yes.
Markdown files. That
Yeah.
would be something like a few steps ahead. Then I would like go into that. And the idea that comes up is like to build a swarm of specialized assistants, which is all like not really automation. I have no grip on automation yet. But like if I can train a Cubase AI really well on a manual and on a few resources on the internet, it might be actually like much quicker to find the right shortcut than searching through the thing itself, or have a method of how do I time stretch in a specific often occurring situation. Like to do this for Cubase, for Reaper, for a preferred set of plugins, and play around with that. Also, as a training ground for myself, how do I build something like that? Because I have a few like much bigger projects on my mind that would need a whole other level of interaction to build, because it's like vast field of information that would be involved there. And if I don't get it right with the Cubase manual, I'll probably have no chance with something that involves dead languages and don't know what.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, I think that sounds like a great idea. I might, if you were doing something like that, I might consider doing something like that through something like Typing Mind. The reason I say that is that one of the features that Typing Mind has, and again, I'm not getting paid for Typing Mind. There are some things about Typing Mind I don't like. It's kind of, there's something about it that's a bit like, oh. But one of the features that it has, so basically it has this thing called a knowledge base. And what this is a very easy way of creating a RAG database. So RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented something beginning with G. I can't remember what it is, but essentially, let me just see if I can actually give you the link to the Typing Mind RAG knowledge base thing. Because what it does, what a RAG knowledge base is, it's like a database. It's called this, I think it's a vector database. And if I'm wrong about that, I apologize to anybody who knows about these things. But essentially what it does is it chunks whatever you put into it into little 200 to 500 word chunks or something. And then those chunks are turned into math, formulas. And so essentially, I think, as far as I can tell, that makes the knowledge, the knowledge base much more easily accessible and less token intensive. So it can more easily kind of, instead of the information going into the window, the context window, it actually can go and access the information from the knowledge base. Now, you can create your own RAG system through various different services, but it's a bit harder. I mean, I'm sure you can do it with the help of an AI, but it's a bit harder and more kind of technical and stuff. So Typing Mind is a very easy way of creating a RAG knowledge base. Bear in mind, though, how they get you with Typing Mind is you can buy Typing Mind just as a one-time payment, and then you pay for access to the LLMs via the API. But with that, the amount of space you get in your knowledge base for the RAG knowledge base is very small, which is when they ask for the subscription, basically. So if you want a knowledge base that is anything in any way significant, you'll end up paying either $10 or $20 a month. Okay. So, but if I was to do what you're thinking of doing, I might actually go for this because it's actually relatively easy to set up and you don't need to go through all the rigmarole of doing it. And Typing Mind has a lot of functionality, which is very, very useful for working with LLMs. Given that the way that you're approaching this and what you want to do, I think Typing Mind might work quite well for you. Because doing things through custom GPTs, they work, but it is it's very, I find them quite frustrating to be honest, to build. So yeah, so that might be a recommendation, but what you're actually doing, what you're thinking of doing, I think it's a great idea.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm fascinated by the idea of projects in ChatGPT, where I think such a set of informations will be one of the bases of that project.
Yeah, I mean the projects are great. The only problem with projects is that the files that you're uploading in there, it loads it into its context window. So if you say go and look at this file, it loads the entire file into the context window. You can't see it, but it loads it into the context window. So that creates a lot of usage, which can then mean that the thing starts degrading. I think, and again, I'm inferring here, I'm not sure about this, with RAG, that's not how it works. Because it's actually looking at numbers, it doesn't work in the same way. That's the impression I get anyway. I actually need to look into that. So yeah, I think RAG has significant benefits over project files. Having said that, if you just want to do it quick and fast, I mean, this is what I've been teaching people to do, is actually use project files. So for your Genius file and things like that, use project files. And if you want to go to the next stage, then start thinking about RAG.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. Yes, I also need to take into account like how much capacity I actually have, aside from the fascination,
exactly,
to actually do those things, because there's like a swarm of tasks arising.
Yeah.
Of like, I just need to look into that, and then I can do that more easy. And I look into that, and I can do that more easy. And I need to keep that manageable.
Exactly. I mean, maybe time boxing it and saying, all right, I'm going to spend this much time on my AI projects every day, and then make it, and do it after something that is much more important and sort of near term, so that you don't end up starting on an AI project and then spending the whole day doing it. Yeah, it's almost like your kind of guilty pleasure or something. That's how I might kind of go about avoiding that situation, because I've definitely fallen. I mean, the thing is, I'm kind of building a business around it, so I've got an excuse. but yeah, so I think that's how I might approach that, because it is a rabbit hole. It's a multi-branching, endless warren of rabbit holes if you're not careful. So yeah.
Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ben. It's exciting
you.
to hear. I think that's a great idea, what you're talking about with the making GPTs for actually helping you sort of do specific things. So great. Let me just, before we finish, go through the chat and make sure that I've got all the questions. Renault says, to be fair, ChatGPT 03 is way better than 4.0. In some situations, yes. I would say in some situations, 03, it depends what you're using it for and how you're using it. So for one thing, 03 can be very stubborn. It sounds ridiculous, but 03 it can get itself into a kind of it won't do. It's almost, I don't know why it happens, but sometimes you just get into this thing where it keeps on harping on at you about this thing, and you're trying to get it off, and it can't. I've left a lot of chats with 03, and that may be just the way that I'm using it. So, but having said that, I absolutely love 03 for the more prompt engineering type things, or more kind of analytical stuff. I definitely use 03, but I wouldn't use it for absolutely everything. So saying it's way better, yes, it is in a sense. The way I would describe Claude 4 Opus is it's like 03, but I wouldn't even say it's in the middle of 4.0 and 03. It's like a friendly 03, and it's less like that and more open. And it feels like it, and this is a feeling, it feels like it kind of understands in a deeper way, where it's almost like 03 is output. You want this, is more robotic, I guess. So that is useful in certain circumstances. Let me see if I can find any other questions. Does Perplexity do something similar to Typing Mind? No. So Perplexity is essentially a AI search engine where it's connected to various different models, and it uses those models to search the internet, and then comes up with actual kind of references and stuff. And then you can ask it further questions. In a sense, people possibly unkindly call it a wrapper around AIs. So in other words, it's almost like a front end for AIs, but it has additional things that it can do. I actually really like Perplexity. I'm not sure they're going to last though, because Google is starting to do the kind of things that Perplexity do. Having said that, I do actually quite like using the tool. I think some of the research stuff is absolutely fantastic. So, but it's not the same as Typing Mind. Typing Mind is like, it can be your interface to being able to access any model that you want. Okay, so it's just a very different thing. It's almost like you can turn it into your sort of dashboard. Having said that, I still do use the apps. So I haven't unsubscribed from ChatGPT or Claude because, number one, I use them so heavily that it's actually worth it just on that. Yeah, it's like I wouldn't be able to. So for example, the conversation I had with Claude yesterday about their headline, I would have curtailed the conversation because I could see that I've always got my dashboard, my console in Anthropic and ChatGPT up when I'm using Typing Mind to make sure that I'm not blowing out the usage. And I don't have to have that. I don't need to worry about that when I'm using the apps. The other reason I still use the apps, ChatGPT and Claude, is that they have certain functionality that Typing Mind doesn't have. So, for example, in ChatGPT, there's the personalization and there's the memories and that kind of thing, and also the remembering context between chats. I actually find that quite valuable. And also in ChatGPT, there's also the thing where you can actually select apps, so it can see the apps on your computer as well. That's really valuable too. So I kind of use all of the above. Paul says, when we're talking ChatGPT, we're talking the free version or paid. So I don't know how limited the free version is, but I think the paid version of ChatGPT is one of the best deals I can imagine. It's ridiculous. So yeah, but again, that's my opinion. But yeah, it's like the $20 a month. It's like you get so much more value than that. It's absurd. How do you Malwin says, how do you upload your Text Genius file? Each time as a prompt or in some settings? And also, do you limit the amount of data input or categorize it somehow? I'll answer the second question first. So yes, I limit the amount of data in there. I'm constantly getting the LLMs to summarize is the wrong word. Distill is probably closer to it. Really try and get the maximum sort of information within the smallest amount of words. Okay, because then that reduces the token usage. And so that means you can have longer conversations without it degrading. Okay, so yes, I do limit the amount of data input. And yes, there are various different categories. I think the categories can be, at this stage, up to you. I am thinking about making this more defined, a thing, like an actual, here's how to do it. That's another thing. Oh, so that's another thing that I want to do. How do I upload my Text Genius file? I tend to keep it in a project when I'm using ChatGPT and when I'm using Claude. It's the one thing I do have in the project nearly all of the time. But usually I do have my Genius file always available in my RAG database. And often what I will do is I will ask at the start, if it's important, if I think it's particularly important, I will ask it at the start to actually check my Genius file. I think there was a question earlier. What am I creating? This. I'm writing, I'm building Make Music, growing Make Music Your Life. Actually, one thing I am doing with Make Music Your Life is I'm actually creating my own vector database using a thing called Pinecone, where I'm anonymizing the transcripts from Make an Album with Mike. So anonymizing everybody. So if, Benjamin is in one of the calls, whenever it says Benjamin, it will say client 1. If there's anything that might suggest it. So I'm removing all of the names except for mine, Mike Monday, and essentially chunking it into these 200 to 500 word chunks and putting it in all of the transcripts into a vector database, because that asset, and it's a very, very hard thing to do because it's a lot, right? All of the workshops I've done over the last however many years is going to take a long time. Because when I've done that, I'll have this asset, this database of almost like all of the information related to what I have developed over the last few years in terms of creativity, the creative process, making music, and all of that stuff. So I will have this database, and with that vector database, that it essentially is AI optimized. In other words, an AI can easily use it, and I can then use that asset in many, many different ways. For example, creating a Mike Monday a sort of chatbot for different stages of the creative process or the whole creative process for helping people write albums. But I can also use it myself to ask myself of various different things. I could use it with the team. I could probably use it to help me write emails. I can use it to notice patterns, to think. There's a lot that I can use it for. And in terms of its difficulty and the effort required to do that, the way I see it is that because it's hard and because it will contain all of the valuable IP that I've created over the years, that both of those things are very, very difficult for anybody to reproduce. Probably impossible. Yeah. That therefore creates a differentiated asset that's really, really important going into our future. So that's why, even though, literally the idea of doing this, I am not a librarian. Mike Monday is many, many things. One of the things he is not is a librarian, but it's essentially like a librarian task. And the thing is, I have to do it myself for a significant amount of time in order to be able to train somebody else to do it for me. And it's like, oh God, but I am doing it because I believe that it will be valuable. Of course, goodness knows what's going to happen with AI. Maybe we just end up floating around on sofas. I hope not. But essentially, that's something that I am also doing as well. So that's it, I think. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out. Don't forget the AI Genius Lab. If you didn't come to the first one, the recordings are actually available right now. I'll just put the link in there just in case you want to check it out. And that sales page, that headline that I've been talking about, is for the second one. So you'll be seeing the headline that me and Claude came up with relatively soon. I'll send you a link to that when it's good to go. So I appreciate you all greatly. Stay human. Remember, always curate what the AI creates. Never rely on the AI. And that's how we keep ourselves human. It's been wonderful hanging out. And thank you so much for this time we spent together. I do think as we work with machines, human interaction becomes more and more important. We don't end up in our solo echo chambers. So I'll do more of these in the future. But until then, onwards and upwards.